Hello and welcome to another podcast of the Yakima Symphony Orchestra. My name is Jeff Snedeker. This is our music director, Lawrence Golan, and we're here today to talk about an upcoming concert of the Yakima Symphony Orchestra in Yakima, Washington. This program is a Pops concert that will take place on Saturday, March 12th at 7:30 p.m. in the Capitol Theater in Yakima. And it's a Pops concert, but it's Oscar night, right?
It is in fact Oscar night.
Now,
Yeah.
you've done Oscar nights other places.
I have.
And it would seem that that would be pretty appealing.
Right, yeah, I first created this program when I was resident conductor of the Phoenix Symphony, and we did it there, and it was very, very successful. And, you know, I thought it would be great to do it here because I think our audience will just love it.
Now, here's the hard part. If you're doing Oscar night, right, that means that you're looking at movie music.
Correct.
Right? And there's a whole bunch of movies out there with music. Now, I've heard movie music with my eyes closed, usually in the scary parts. And I wonder sometimes if that music really works in a concert setting. I know that it does because I played some, obviously. But how do you go about choosing music for Oscar? I mean, obviously, it's won an Oscar, right? That's why it's called. But how do you sort through that to decide what sort of which Oscar music you're going to use that could actually work in a concert setting?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And going back to the obvious, yes, every piece on the program has won the Oscar, either for Best Music or Best Picture, or in most cases, both. And so that's the number one criteria. But then, as you said, not necessarily is every piece that won an Oscar going to work in a concert setting.
Right.
And, you know, that's just where programming comes in. And just like, you know, performing any piece on any concert, movie or otherwise, I need to look at each possibility and consider whether I think it will be something that the audience will enjoy and find interesting. And something, you know, that will work with the program.
Sometimes it's, in the fact that it's popular, right, that people know it, will sort of help us over that hump, right?
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you really do need to be able to see something to appreciate the music. But again, if it's a really popular movie, then, you know, chances are the music is very familiar, and people's minds will take care of needing the visual image.
Exactly. And on top of that, another way I constructed the program is with chronology, actually. We'll be taking a chronological tour of Oscar award-winning film scores and movies from the beginning, in the first major blockbuster, Gone with the Wind, won 10 Oscars, and going all the way through the most recent major Oscar award-winning blockbuster, The Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
Which actually won 11 Oscars. Wow. And that's the current record. At this point in time, there's no movie that has won more than 11.
Interesting.
And will be along the way, you know, I've chosen music that, of course, fits the Oscar criteria and that will be well known by the audience and just fantastic music that stands on its own. It's not just you know, background music as such.
Right. Well, and of course that's good to hear. So run us down. What are some of the highlights? Let's talk about which movies we're going to do.
Right. Well, like I said, we start with Gone with the Wind, and then some of the old-time classics that followed include Ben-Hur, with the famous chariot scene, and in fact, we'll be playing the music from the chariot scene.
Oh, cool! It's exciting music.
Right. We have Exodus, which was a Paul Newman Oscar award-winning film. We have Breakfast at Tiffany's, music by Henry Mancini. Love Story. And then starting to come more into the modern age, we have movies such as The Godfather, Rocky, Chariots of Fire. And then we get into actually a genre of movies, specifically the Disney movies.
Oh, cool.
In the 1990s, Disney was on a roll. And in fact, at one point, they won the the Oscar for Best Music and Best Movie like 4 out of 5 years in a row.
Wow.
You know, movies like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Under the Sea, well, the song Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid,
right.
And The Lion King. These all came back to back to back and all won, you know, Oscar-winning films and film scores. And then continuing forward, we have Forrest Gump, a great film, great music.
Interesting.
Titanic.
Yeah, there you go.
Which, by the way, is tied with the Lord of the Rings with 11 Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because when you think about the music from films, and you think about the number of people that watch films or go to the movies or videos or whatever, and hear that music, a lot of it is sort of classically based, right? It uses a classical orchestra, and yet people don't necessarily think of it that way. They really do think of it as popular music. But as a result, people are hearing traditional orchestras playing popular music, and let's face it, more people hear that music than are going to classical concert halls for symphonies. But yet, it's still classically based. I wonder if there's a way to get people connected to that, Maybe a Pops concert is the way to go.
Well, I think it is, actually. I mean, as far as we're concerned, the orchestra as an organization, great music is great music.
Right.
Whether it was written for a concert hall or written for a movie, if it's great music, we want our audience to hear it. But you do bring up an interesting point, which is, and this goes back to your first question, not all movie music is symphonically based.
That's true.
And so there have been some Oscar award-winning films and film scores that, the music is essentially, rock songs.
Right.
And, those don't work as well on a symphony concert.
Sure.
So going back to how to choose, I had to choose the ones that are symphonically based.
But folks that go to the movies and enjoy the movies and find the music very stirring may discover that a concert like this could bridge them or make them at least feel more comfortable coming to a concert that has Beethoven in it or
Absolutely,
something like
because
that.
the symphony is the symphony. I mean,
Right.
the orchestra's the same. We're playing different music.
Yeah.
And speaking of popular movie composers, the king of all kings is, of course, John Williams.
John Williams.
His music is not only popular, it's instantaneously recognizable. Within 3 or 4 seconds, anybody on the planet can name most of his film scores.
Right. It's truly amazing.
And we will, of course, be doing some John Williams.
Absolutely. Well, that's good. Because he writes good horn parts. So I like that. It's really kind of interesting to think that somebody like John Williams, or perhaps just John Williams, who has written so much music that has become a part of our culture in many ways, whether it's, again, concert music or film music or just the Olympic theme by itself, right? Puts him in a position of being perhaps the composer that more people in the history of the world have ever heard. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And he writes mostly for orchestra. Kind of interesting, huh?
So the orchestra is the greatest ensemble.
Yeah. And we're not just saying.
And I'm not just saying that. Why? Because we have everything. We have every instrument at our disposal, and so a composer writing for an orchestra, it's like a kid in a candy store. He can write whatever he or she wants.
So, for those of you who love movie music, and for those of you who have never been to a classical orchestra concert, this may be your opportunity to figure out what an orchestra sounds like in person, and who knows, you might like it. Please join us at the Capitol Theater in Yakima, Washington on Saturday, March 12th at 7:30 p.m. for Oscar night.